Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This second part to the Candace Owens versus Piers Morgan reaction video is me doing an analysis on the basic themes that we touched upon in the first video. Enjoy. So I love that this woman's standing her ground. And, she just doesn't give an F about what they throw at her. Okay, it's like water. How's it go? Like water off a duck's back, or whatever. It just doesn't work. So she's almost like Trump. Like all the accusations, whatever they did. Russia Gate, all of it. It just doesn't work. It just makes him stronger. Okay, there's always certain special, select people in history that have that ability. She's one of them, right? She's in that category. So it's incredible to me to just be witnessing this stuff, okay? I'm really enjoying her Twitter posts and so on. Nothing that she's saying is bad or evil or controversial or anti-Semitic. I mean, this anti-Semitism term, I'm not about to start saying all this crazy truther conspiracist BS. It's like, oh, but what does anti-Semitism mean anyway? A Semite is not even about, this whole thing about, well, they're not even Semites because they're Ashkenazis, because they're Khazars, blah, blah, blah. I've looked into all that stuff back in the day. I'm going to turn on the aircon yet again. Looked into all these things. I'm not really on board with it full on. Maybe the Khazar theory is true, maybe not. I don't really care at this point. I'm not saying I don't care from an ignorant point of view. It's just that I don't care because, there's 24 hours in the day and I have to sleep for approximately 8 of them. I don't have time to constantly be looking into these things on a full-time basis, all right? I've looked into them enough for almost 30 years. So I know the basics, but I don't want to go there. Like, it's not to say that anti-Semitism completely doesn't exist. That's total bullshit. But like I said in the beginning, to cry anti-Semitism for things that are just nothing burgers, just legitimately nothing, like looking at something and completely making it into something else, something that it's not. We're dangerously getting into like paranoia territory in this instance, right? And like I said at the start, I'm not saying it to be dismissive of it or anything. I'm literally saying that I'm not being dismissive. I'm telling you, I understand what's going on. I understand how it works, although I haven't had lived experience of a similar thing to that extent. I've had a little bit of it, like when the Australians of the Anglo-Saxon extraction treated Greek Australians in a similar way, like the Greek version of anti-Semitism, I guess. But like I've experienced it like in a minor way, okay, a smaller version of. But I do understand the mechanism, okay. Like what I'm saying, people might be jumping up and down and saying, but it's not it, and that's woo-woo, and what the hell are you talking about? And you gotta be more grounded in reality. What the hell are you talking about, man? How the hell can this be a solution? No, it's the solution, because the bulk of this whole problem with any marginalized group that's been through a lot of stuff in the past, 99% of the reason why they overreact to certain things to this day, even while their station in life has greatly improved. I mean, you take the Jews, they're doing 1,000 times better than they did 200 years ago when they were in the European ghettos. Take the women, they're doing 1,000 times better than what they were doing 100 years ago when they didn't have as much agency and when Western civilization was not a matriarchy that it currently is now. Technically on the books it's a matriarchy because all the laws are pro-woman and anti-man. So when you have a society that's like pro one side, it's that side archy. So In this particular case, it's a matriarchy because it's all pro-women, right? So it's open and shut case. It's what it is because all the laws favour women. So it's a matriarchy. So it doesn't matter what we say it is. It matters what it actually is. So, and then, yet again, sorry, no, again that was wrong. And yet, that's it, we have women acting as if it's still like the 1850s or something, okay, or 1650s where they were burning witches. Like, it's like I'm thinking, sweetheart, look at civilization, look at the West, look at all the laws, look at all the things, all the entitlements and stuff. You're in a matriarchy and you're complaining about the patriarchy. Black people, reparations, this and that. Oh, that police officer looked at me. Oh, this, oh, look, that person who looked at me funny in the restaurant. You know, all these things. Because if we don't heal the racial trauma that these behaviors actually stem from, because like I said in the beginning, you know, go back to the start and look at the thing that I was describing about how this entire set of behaviors and reactions comes from the R complex, the reptilian brain, okay, which is our most primitive brain. It's like the fire thing. It's like, whoa, it's burning. It's like, ooh, that's it. That's their reaction. It's like, well, what did you say? Why did you look at me like that? You know, zero impulse control, zero, because it's reacted. It's the reptilian mind. Okay. You can't. There's no. It's even below the emotional mind, which is the second level that's grown on top of that, which is called the limbic system. So we want to eliminate reptilian mind behaviors as much as possible. Ideally, bringing them down to zero. But at this point, it's like the bulk of humanity operates on the two lower minds. All right, of all races. Okay, that's what I was saying earlier, sarcastically. You know, I don't believe that 95% of people are geniuses and 5% of people are NPCs. It's more like 95% of people are more or less dumb or average, and only about 5% of people have the true capacity for true thought, as in what's it called? Frontal cortex. You know, the higher mind, the logical mind. Only approximately 5% of humanity can bypass the two lower minds, the reptilian and the emotional mind. Okay, so when we get caught in the reptilian patterns, it's just fight or flight, and terrible things can happen. Okay, so we need to find ways to heal these past traumas. Every race has them, but the thing is, with the Jewish people, unfortunately, for them and for everyone, because I mean it affects everyone else as well. These reactions that are not logical, but especially for them, it's bad. So especially, I'm pleading with them, guys. You need to do this for yourself first. All right, try to find ways. You know, we're getting into woo-woo territory now, but hey, get over it. Like I said before, look at quantum physics for 5 goddamn minutes. There you go. You got your answer. And it will tell you that, you know, this thing is not actually solid. Okay, everybody knows that. Come on, a little kid knows that. You know, everyone knows. Every man and his dog knows about Plato's theory of forms. Okay, if they don't, they should. So this needs to be healed. Okay, this trauma, because otherwise we're gonna keep going around circles. All right, it's gonna be like, I thought you meant that, like Andrew Clavin, for example, or Ben Shapiro or someone, and I thought you meant that, so now I'm going to fire you because of it, and blah blah blah. And if you keep going around on YouTube and saying things that are true but that I don't like, and because they trigger my sorry, I keep using the Dianetic thing. Ron Hubbard's version of the reptilian brain is the reactive mind. So anyway, because I read that book, anyway. Yes, get over it if you don't like the fact that I've read it. So anyway, so you get, don't say that. No. we need to ban your speech now. We need to pass laws in the Congress that minimize freedom of speech. And like we get in this circle of less and less freedom of speech, more and more government control. People on both sides are not happy because I can't imagine the people that feel like the entire world's against them and they're going to be genocide at any minute now and are looking for oppressors around every corner. I don't imagine that that's a happy existence, is it? Really? I don't think it is. Like if I'm speaking to one of you that does feel like this, is that a recipe for happiness? Okay? Or like the feminists that I was saying, like another example of the feminists, a classic example, like I was saying before. Are you really happy with constantly looking for excuses to convince yourself that this is an oppressive patriarchy when it's actually on paper, like technically on the laws and the books and everything, the way society's set up in the past roughly 70 years or whatever, it's technically a matriarchy. Okay, it's actually and factually a matriarchy. You're like, oh, but it's a patriarchy. It's because that particular group has not gotten over the traumas of, this lifetime traumas as well, like perhaps something happened with their father or with the early boyfriend or something, or a co-worker or a controlling male boss, whatever. So there's a trauma. It's a trauma response. So it's like a form of PTSD, and there's a particular thing that triggers you every time you hear the word masculine or something. It's like, oh, the entire thing must be toxic because I had one or two experiences once that convinced me that it's toxic. So therefore, the whole thing is toxic. So back to the Israel/Jewish thing now. It goes even deeper because pretty much the entire race has been traumatized so much the past 2,000 years roughly. They've only caught a break now in the past couple of centuries, is when they got out of the ghettos. But there's a very deep ancestral trauma there. So it's in the DNA. So if that is not cleared out, if that is not cleansed, if that is not healed somehow, we're going to keep repeating the same things over and over again. And nobody wants this. Like I said, I'm pleading with you, especially you don't want it. Why would you want to live like this? Why is it awesome? Is it great to live in that state of paranoia and fear? I don't think it is, right? I assure you there's no secret conspiracy of white supremacists that want to do a similar thing that Tiny Mustache Man and his buddies wanted to do. I mean, that was a once in a lifetime, once off in history. I don't think that's ever going to happen again. But we are in a Weimar Germany 2.0, but in a global one this time. So there is going to be massive pushback, and it's going to be global this time, but it's going to be in the form of nationalist, populism rising up and getting rid of any groups or organizations or NGOs or whatever that are not conducive to a healthy nationalist outlook. Okay, nationalism is the healthiest thing. I mean, to say that nationalism is bad or evil is as inane as saying wanting to eat or drink or sleep is evil, because it is as natural as those three bodily needs that I mentioned there. It is, because it's the whole reason that we have countries and nations today is because the tribes, first it was like a man and woman had a few kids, and then somehow they found someone else from the neighboring tribe, and the kids had kids because the siblings didn't marry each other. like the pharaohs. Um, so eventually, you know, like 10 people became 50, became 200, and then it was like a little community slash village and blah blah blah. And through villages, they grew and grew, and they created the first towns and cities. And then through that, you know, a nation, like a particular, a very specific tribe came to be, that all come from the same founder. And you can find this through DNA. It's not just like all these founder myths. We have one in Greece, like a guy called Helen with two L's. It's not a chick's name. The Helen, the female name Helen is with one L, but this guy's two L's. In Greek, it's called Elin. So Anglosphere decided to butcher and call it Helen for some reason. But that's the guy. I'm descended from that guy. Maybe he started the tribe 10,000 years ago. God knows. But I believe this. This is real stuff. Because it's like if you look at the like studies that they've done to sort of gauge the world population 10,000 years ago, whatever, it was something ridiculously small. It would have been like in a handful of millions all over the planet. So this makes sense that there were like, you know, a few thousand people in Greece, a few thousand people in Israel, a few thousand people in Italy, a few thousand people in Germany, a few thousand people in South America, you know, and these were like the first handful of people that started each individual distinctive tribe that we're slash race that we have today. So it's a beautiful thing that we have these differences, but differences they are. And because the thing called tribes and races are real and distinct, and they developed in this way, and the way they developed was through having that in-group preference, as in fighting the invading tribe, being a little bit xenophobic in a good way, as in a like in terms of self-preservation, doing it to safeguard your tribe. It's like, who's that stranger? I don't know if that guy's just going to come in and kill us all while we're asleep. You know, you got to be a bit suspicious of a stranger, right? Coming into the tribe suddenly. So that in-group preference, that innate, it's like almost genetics, like a hardwiring that we can't really override, and we shouldn't. That's what has led to, you know, the development of the various races and tribes over the earth, and it's a beautiful thing. Would we want to all be exactly the same? It's amazing that we have all these different tribes, sub-tribes, and so on. So, sorry, races, tribes, sub-tribes. And if this thing called nationalism, which is a word that's this Orwellian, like they've flipped it in an Orwellian fashion, trying to make it that it's bad. I mean, what are they gonna say next? Waterism, you know, the fact that I have this innate need to drink water, a certain amount of water every day, otherwise I'm gonna die, or whatever, get seriously ill anyway, and eventually die if I don't drink for however many it is. Like I can survive for about a month, I believe, something like that, without drinking water. So I wouldn't be surprised, you know, if they come out with some BS like that, like to make our natural needs, the lowest needs of Maslow's hierarchy, you know, water, sleep, sexuality, you know, clothing, warmth, housing, all right? The Orwellian left can come up with all kinds of stuff to say that, oh, that's bad, you know, you shouldn't be drinking 2 liters of water a day. You're a white waterist if you're doing that, and you're harming other people for wanting to drink 2 liters a day. I mean, the social engineers, if we allow them, they probably could do something like that. I know it sounds comical what I'm describing, the scenario. I mean, it's hypothetical, it's never going to happen, but if, believe me, if they wanted to get us to that point where we're going to start questioning our own thirst and feeling guilty for wanting to drink 2 liters of water a day, they could do it within a few generations. Because if you convince 2 or 3 generations in a row that that is actually true, once the last remaining generations die out, you know, the people who are not brainwashed on that particular thing, then who else is going to be left to tell you that, hey, this is BS, okay? Unless you've got like they have a copy of this video in the future to be able to watch this and be deprogrammed from that hypothetical future brainwashing. But that can happen because everything else that they've done in the past 100 years or so, it's pretty much as satanically inverted as the hypothetical thing of, you know, brainwashing us into thinking water's bad. But, you know, if they could do all these other things, like convincing us that family, marriage is bad, children are bad, convincing women that doing the greatest thing that a woman can accomplish, which is have a child, they convince women that that's bad, you know. So equally, they're convincing us that having in-group preference and loving your own kin, you know, as in mother, father, siblings first, and then cousins and so on, and then just your kinsmen in general, the larger members of the overall tribe. Okay, convincing us they have already convinced a lot of us, way more people than is normal. Okay, they've convinced that is a bad thing. Well, that probably could convince us that, you know, breathing oxygen and drinking water is a bad thing also. I mean, sky's the limit with what they can brainwash us on. So it's just brainwashing. Like 100 years ago, no one would have batted an eyelid at these statements I'm making here. Like, yeah, of course. What do you mean nationalism? What's that? I mean, it probably didn't even exist as a word, and even if it did, the meaning was not as twisted as it is now. It's like suddenly now it's a bad word. All right. Why is it bad? I mean, it's probably because the National Socialists gave it a bad name. Okay, because they took it too far. They took the idea too far. I mean, but I mean, Germans do that, you know. Like German problems require German solutions, if you know what I mean. Like, so the way Germans solve things it's like it's quite like the Gordian knot. If you don't know the story of the Gordian knot, just look it up. Gordian. Gordian. It's just a legendary story, a legend about Alexander the Great having. It was like this very complicated knot that he had to undo. And there was a prophecy centered on it and everything, that whoever cut the knot, whoever undid this knot would take over, would be the master of Asia. And Alexander's like, oh fuck this, so he just took out his sword and just cut it. But technically that he did undo it, he just didn't do it like this, he just did it much quicker and more decisive. So that appears to be the German way of handling things, and they did it in World War II and everything. So that is not indicative of the entire white race, however. Okay, and all of us have gotten a bad name because of the Germans back in World War II. That's primarily why I am not really on board with them, even though it was a fantastic thing that they stopped the Bolsheviks from expanding into, well, anywhere at all. But I mean, it was bad enough that they'd taken over Russia, the greatest the biggest country on earth, size-wise. they stopped the communist. This is the fact. They stopped the communist takeover of Europe and then the world. But then they became pretty much worse, or as bad. I don't know. I'm really undecided at this point which side was worse. But they were both horrible. Like there was genocide written all over both of those factions. All right, so which means it's no good. Okay, either way you look at it, but it's just that the Germans, yeah, they gave a bad name to nationalism in general, and especially European nationalism, and now everybody, for almost the entire planet, the word nationalism is suddenly a buzzword, one of those Orwellian buzzwords that people freak out about and get triggered over. Okay, and we shouldn't, because it's the most natural thing in the world. All right, it's similar to how, you know, how the Catholic Church, like a lot of people criticize the church for having suppressed people's natural sexual tendencies. Okay, suppressed people's sexuality, and when you do that, first of all, it comes out in ugly ways. You can't completely suppress it, and number two, you can control people easier when you suppress a number of their most basic hardwired impulses that they can't really live without. Like I mean, you can't. I keep trying to fix this, making it look more straight. Yeah. There's a couple of basic things like sexuality, hunger, thirst, all the other needs that I mentioned a couple of minutes ago that are at the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You can't suppress these in people, otherwise it's not good. I mean, that's how you enslave a population, when you suppress those basic instincts. All right. One of these, another big one, aside from sexuality, is the nationalism thing. It's not wrong. It's nothing wrong with it. I mean, and because communism is like a modern atheistic religion, okay, it's like a secular religion. Just like Christianity oppressed sexuality, communism oppresses nationalism, which is equally an equally powerful force, instinctual desire and force that we have, that all humans have, and it should not be suppressed and demonized. Otherwise, it's going to come out in ugly ways, and it's just not good. I mean, nobody in their right mind is going to say, like, I'm a Greek person, right? I'm not going to say, oh, I hate those Greeks. What, are you fucked in the head? Why would you say that, such a thing? You know, like, why would anyone, like an Irish person, say, oh, I hate the Irish? But you're Irish. Why would you hate the Irish? You know what I mean? Like, it's the most fucked up thing that can possibly exist as an idea, you know, as a worldview, as an ideology to have. And yet, here we are. People, like millions of people, have been convinced that, yeah, nationalism is bad. I shouldn't be proud of my. What do you mean? Let's get to the bottom of this. Let's go to the bottom of this rabbit hole. Let me keep asking questions and see if we can get to a conclusion here. See if at the bottom, are we going to hit insanity or logic? I bet we're going to end up at an insane conclusion that's going to be cognitive dissonance all the way. All right? Okay. So you're saying to be proud of your tribe and your race is bad. Why? Do you have a reason for this? Like an actual valid, like a logical reason? Or, well, they might say, well, because look at the wars and conflicts that started back in the past, and also I'm an individual, so I can't take credit for what my race did, because that's a collective, that's not an individual thing. It's like each person is individual. Okay, but then again, I could also say that sometimes individualism goes too far. The West is we're well known for, you know, being pretty much the inventors of individualism, but like, you're taking it too far, pal, when you're saying, oh no, but I'm just an individual. It doesn't mean because my ancestors were Greek or my ancestors were German or Italian that I should. Dumbass, you're part of it. It doesn't matter that it's like a group mind or like a collective. It's still valid. Yes, you're an individual, but also you have a part of you that's part of that particular collective. So own it. Okay? Own it. Don't shy away from it, alright? You've been psyoped. Huh? Understand that, please. So okay, that's out of the way. That's a bullshit argument. So that wouldn't apply. So then they don't. We can't use that. You can't say, oh, but you can't. I can't be proud for something that some random ancestor did that I'm not connected to. Blah blah blah. You are connected to it because you're part of that tribe. So let's dig deeper. Why else would it be bad? Oh, because you can start wars and stuff, and we don't want that because we want to be, you know, imagine all the people being Bolshevik murderers. All right. I'm embarrassed, almost embarrassed that I share the same birthday as that man nowadays, now that I realise what a communist he was. But anyway, great song though. Lyrics, worst lyrics of all time, I must say. So, they think that by eliminating nationalism, that magically we're going to stop wars. Really? Really? You need like the retard of the century to win the retard of the century award if you believe that. It's like when they say that if we give the power to the main political positions of power to women, that we're never going to have another war. Again, it's such a one-sided, it's such a myopic view. It's like an either-or thing. It's like if it's just women, it's going to be perfect, but it's just men, it's going to be. It's like the Israel-Palestine thing. It's like one side is perfect and the other is evil. Well, no, you're a retard if you think that. It's like, or if you think that men are perfect and women are evil, or men are all toxic and women are angel. Both those people are retarded if they say that. Okay, it's yin and yang. We both got like every man has got a little bit of yin in them, and every woman has got a little bit of yang in them, to varying degrees, right? It's total BS to be absolutist on anything ever. It's like, well, if we're not nationalists, then we're never going to have a war again. So we can just like unite the whole planet and be a brotherhood of man. And right, go away with that Masonic communist bullshit, brotherhood of man. It's not going to work. It's probably going to make things worse. The USSR, newsflash, the USSR tried that. Where is the USSR now? Okay, so. That's BS. That doesn't make sense because how? Are you going to prevent wars by what? By like just making everything like in this borderless wasteland where all the different tribes that some of them are like oil and water and don't get along with each other. Some of them are neutral. Some of them don't necessarily get along that well, but they can live in the same area. Some of them should absolutely not be living within 1,000 miles of each other, let alone living in the same geographical area. That you think that is gonna not create what like is gonna create a future with no wars ever again? You got to be out of your mind. That will be like guaranteed to create much more turmoil and conflict and strife than nationalism ever could have. Nationalism is this, ladies and gentlemen, simply this. Oh, hey, what's up? Just wanted to say a quick word about my fantasy novel titled Lifting the Curse, Volume 1, Guardian of the Magic. It's Volume 1 because it's the first half of the first novel in a 9-part planned saga. I have all the outlines for the rest of the sequels planned out, you see. So they're all going to be released in rapid succession. So I just wanted to let you know that people who enjoy a channel like this will probably love this book because it's a combination of classic high fantasy in the vein of Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, Dune, etc. and conspiracy thriller, we could say, like Da Vinci Code, that kind of thing, or Name of the Rose, Umberto Eco, the Italian writer. So I think people that like my work on the channel and my writings on Facebook and so on will actually, there's a very big chance that they will actually enjoy the book as well. So it's only 99 cents at the moment because it's the first in the series, and it talks about real stuff, okay, about what we might term conspiracy theories, okay. It talks about all kinds of culture war stuff, about political stuff, historical things, and on and on. Okay, there's a giant glossary in the end that in which I have over 200 definitions on all these things, including things like problem, reaction, solution, and so on. Okay, so the glossary is pretty much half the length of the book. Not all of the books are going to be like this, but this first entry has got the most glossary terms because it had to, because I mentioned a bunch of things in the start of the saga. So we needed to start the first entry of this thing with a gigantic glossary, all right? So I think the guys that like a channel like this one will really like this book, especially if you're a fantasy fan already, because it's original in the sense that it's set on Earth in the current day. Okay, the main villains are the Illuminati. Okay, so it's very current, I see. So I talk about the World Economic Forum. I mean, there's a glossary entry about them as well. So it's like this, so it goes on and on like this. The different tribes, you know, the different races, tribes, sub-tribes, living in their own little area, which has got its borders and everything to keep the other different people out that don't really get along with them, and therefore would cause more chaos and therefore make the people less happy, less prosperous, etc., etc. They just want their own space. I mean, why do we have houses? Why don't you just leave your doors unlocked constantly and just let anyone come in, all right? It's the same thing, it's just on a bigger scale. That's what a nation is, right? It's amazing to me that people just don't understand that, but there you go. It's because they've been brainwashed, right? Yeah, so I think this covers it. I touched on a lot of things in this one. And that was based. She's amazing. The woman is amazing. I mean, I can't believe that she actually had the balls to say, you know, to talk about the fact that it's always one-sided, and we're hearing about the Holocaust all the time, but never about the Armenian genocide and all these other ones, you know, the Greek genocide perpetrated by the Turks 100 years ago, and all this other stuff. Why doesn't anyone give a flying shit about that? Okay. It's because whoever wins the war creates a narrative after that. Okay. If Germany had won 80 years ago, we would have had a completely different narrative now on the planet. Okay. They lost, and the current narrative, the narrative in the past 80 years is that Germans are the most evil race and blah blah blah. I've met Germans. I didn't get that vibe. You know, I've met Jews, I've met Israelis, I didn't get that vibe from them either. I've had Muslim friends in Melbourne, they were great. One of them I still talk to him on WhatsApp. It's like people are people, but there are certain things that governments do, that collectives do, that people are not fully responsible for always, because you're responsible for your own life as an individual, but what the collective does is, in the way that people view Greeks as a whole, as a group, is very different to how a single individual from Germany would view me as a friend, okay, as opposed to how that German person might view Greeks as a whole. Might think that we're just lazy and unorganized, and we have a overly bloated, what's it called, government sector, hospitals not running well and being unorganized, and things like that. Okay, that would be true, but both things would be equally true. Okay, like they could say that, oh yeah, I'm a cool guy on an individual level, and I'm very unlike the average Greek person, and I am. I think very differently to most of the Muggles here. But at the same time, they could say, well, yes, but Greeks in general are so and so, the stuff I said a minute ago, and they would both be true. Okay, so. But the thing is, I can't distance myself from the Greek collective. I can't say, well, I'm an individual, so it doesn't matter that, you know, a big percentage of Greeks are so on and so on. That's a stereotype. Don't start saying these stereotypes. But the stereotype's there because a large percentage of that particular group behave in that way. Who the hell made the stereotype? Did someone just invent it out of nowhere? It's because a certain pattern of behavior keeps showing in that group. So I'm not going to deny it. I'm going to say that me personally, I don't follow that group mind, but there is a particular racial behavior, okay, certain patterns. So that's a problem, right? So we have the group soul and the individual, the group mind and individual. So they're both real, and we're part of both. You can't separate yourself out. Well, I can't be proud of being an Irish person, okay, because so what? I'm not, what's his name, Oscar Wilde. I'm not Oscar Wilde personally. Oscar Wilde was just one individual, or whatever, or, you know, just pick any race. I'm just randomly just doing the Irish now, and I thought of Oscar Wilde, you know, accomplished Irish writer. So, but you are part of it, because that's a part of you. Like, you are also part of that racial collective. I mean, people are, you know, brainwashed so much these days that they think that that's not true. But that's equally part of you as your individual self. Okay, so you can't dismiss one in favor of the other. You can't dismiss one in favor of the other. You can't completely disregard the group mind of your race/tribe in favor of just the individualism, of just the self. Okay, because they're both valid. They're both as valid as each other. So this thing called nationalism is the group mind coming together and working for the furtherance of its own survival goals. Okay, like, just so it can continue into the future of linear time and thrive and survive and thrive. I mean, where is that wrong? I think it's because we're so individualistic in this culture that we disregard, like, oh, that's just tribalism. Yes, you're here today because of tribalism, like I described earlier, or whatever, 10 minutes ago. It's like, if that didn't exist, we wouldn't have survived long enough to get to this point now, to have these different offshoots of humanity, which is a beautiful thing. Okay, and the social engineers want to get rid of that completely. That's why they're pushing all these things, like these satanically inverted ideas. Like I said before, I mean, it's as bad almost as like calling it waterism and saying, you're a waterist. Like, hell yeah, I'm a waterist. I need 2 liters of water a day, and go fuck yourself if you believe otherwise. That's exactly what we should be saying when people say, you're a nationalist. I'm like, hell yes I am. And if you think I should be otherwise, go fuck yourself, please. We should be saying that en masse, though, not just me and Candace. Everybody should be saying that. They should be saying that to their bosses. They should be saying that to their friends, to their family, to their friends, to their especially to their spouses, because you can't marry, you can't live with someone like girlfriend or whatever, wife, someone living with, having children with them especially, and you know, you want to drink 2 liters of water a day, and the woman's like, "You're a waterist. I can't live with a waterist. You're hateful because you want to drink 2 liters of water a day." I read in this book that there were these people that were waterists 100 years ago, and they killed all these other people because they were not drinking enough water. Like it's all these insane. It's insane when you get to the bottom of these, how these psyops work. You realize there's like, oh my God, is anything real? Okay, so everything you hear from authoritative sources, like fake news, fake education, fake spirituality, aka organized religion, you should always take it with a grain of salt and say, okay, let me do my own due diligence on this one. I've been talking a lot today, so a little bit of a lot. Do your own due diligence on it, and never take it like, don't just take it in uncritically. Okay, that's the last thing you want to do, because you don't know how we got here. You don't know 150 years ago what people actually believed and how people actually lived, and what the social engineers have done to the subsequent generations. From, I don't know how many generations would be. Generations about what, 25, 30 years roughly. I used to know that when I was a teenager. I read that a generation is 33 years roughly. I think now they've shortened it, so let's say 20ish. So 150 years is about 7 generations, right? How do you know what's been done to each of these 7 generations, and how much they were conditioned into believing stuff that are actually against nature and like anti-natural law, anti-reality basically? That's why I call it satanically inverted. I don't mean it in a religious sense. You can replace the word satanically with entropy, I guess, entropically. Like it's like this force of this anti-life force. That's what, to me, that's how I define the word, satanic, right? You can use Ahrimanic, you can use whatever, the dark side of the force, whatever you want to call it. But it's this entropic anti-life force. Okay, so these things are satanically inverted. Like they make us believe something that's not real, that actively works against our survival and well-being. And one of these things is nationalism, like demonizing the word nationalism, because I'm telling you, it's like these social engineers want to create, like, they're like of a Fabian socialist ilk, if you know what I mean. Okay, for those who know, they know. I'm not going to get into a rant now about what Fabian socialism is. Those who know. If you don't, Google it, or maybe I'll make another video about it or whatever. But the Fabian, this all starts from Fabian socialists, okay, and it all starts in London. Right, so England is the center of the center of the spider's web, really, as far as the New World Order / Illuminati conspiracy, whatever you want to call it. So London is like the headquarters of that. Fabian socialism, and their stated goals, according to their writings and everything, was to create, like socially engineer mankind, like to create a new man, to create something that's different to what exists now. So, and they wanted to they were very open in stating that they wanted to change us down to our very, our most basic desires and innate drives that I've been mentioning about, sexuality and our need for eating, sleeping, drinking, whatever, they even want to change those things. Like they want to completely transform humanity and make us into something unrecognizable. All right. So the amount of brainwashing that's been going on in the past 100 years or so through groups like that are behind, like they are basically the ideologies behind this thing we call the New World Order or the Cabal, etc. It's thoroughly satanic, as per the definition of satanic I gave earlier. Thoroughly anti-life. All right. So there's no telling the amount of brainwashing and conditioning that the past 5, 6, 7, 8 generations have been subjected to, particularly like in the Anglospheric and in the first world nations in general, like Northern European countries and so on. Because places like Greece or Russia, like the more orthodox Christian oriented places, we seem to be more immune to this bullshit for some reason. But not more, pretty much completely immune to it. But the Anglosphere in the northern European nations, these ideas seem to be normalized almost at this point. Like these completely things that go totally against human nature. People are like, oh, what do you mean? It's fine. Yeah, men and women are the same. Like apples and oranges. No. It's just apples and oranges are not different. Men are not from Mars. Women are not from Venus. That's oppressive to say that. No, it's retarded. If you're saying that, that's what it is. But it's just like that's how conditioning works, man. Like all you need is about 3 generations, and then you can make them believe anything, like literally anything. Okay, they can literally make us believe that gravity doesn't exist. And at some point, the generation that's born into a world where they have no videos or books or anything that are talking about how things were before, that are saying the truth about gravity. And the last old person that knew the truth has died off and everything. Well, they're born into a world where they think gravity is just a social construct, and then if the Cabal wanted to just kill us off by getting people to just be jumping off cliffs and balconies thinking that gravity is not real, there you go, mission accomplished. All right. So they can make us believe literally anything, as long as they brainwash about 3 generations in a row into any bullshit they want to, while eliminating any contrary information, okay, that will go against it, and also memory holding previous stuff, okay, like getting rid of books or videos or whatever that would tell a different narrative and actually tell the truth of the situation. So there's no telling what is real or not. You can never believe the authorities, right? The authoritative sources. Why are they an authority? Why is some guy that went to some university that's like a brainwashing institution, more or less, and got a piece of paper from it, just from being a good little boy and repeating the stuff and then, learning it off by heart, like memorizing the stuff and then writing it in a test and then passing in, and they give him a piece of paper. And then this guy's an authority now. An authority on what? Okay? Is he like a very good repeater? Is he just a repeater, to use a term from David Icke? Is he just repeating the stuff that the other repeaters told him? Where does it start? Like, where's the beginning of that chain? Where is that from? Who was the first authority? Was he peer reviewed with the theory that he came up with? Like, they have this shit now, this bullshit in American academia, this insane idea. I think it came out in the 90s or the 2000s or something. Some crazy feminist professor. Words of violence. A couple of generations later, all these young kids are believing that that's an actual fact of life. Words of violence. This trickles down into society. It's not just some crazy, like quirky little intellectual idea. It's just it trickles down into society and it creates real damage. Okay? Someone says something to a person, it's like, oh, words of violence, I feel threatened by you making that sarcastic comment or something. And they get the person fired. Or they go out in the streets and start yelling non-stop, or they lobby to eventually create laws that, like it's enshrined into law at some point, the insanity. It's like words of violence, therefore such and such law, you can't say this and that. That's a disaster. Eventually we're going to completely lose the First Amendment with that. I mean, because if I'm not American, I'd love to be, but when I said we, I'm not speaking as an American on paper. I'm speaking as a citizen of the world, but America is the world. I mean, America kind of is the global leader. I mean, if there was a globalized society, America would be pretty much the blueprint, okay, the template upon which we would base it. So the Constitution would theoretically, the American Constitution should theoretically apply to everyone, okay, if they had half a brain. So that's why I said we. So we're going to lose the First Amendment if something like this, if this stuff keeps going on and on. So that's why we're always going to do our own diligence. We can never be absolutists and say one side is bad, one side is good. I mean, it's not just the Israel-Palestine thing. Like I said before, I was saying about people who say that about men and women, or about anything and anyone, anything. Okay, you can never say one thing is 100% wrong and the other thing is 100% right, and vice versa. No, because that always leads to disaster. Like I said, I'm not with either side with the Israel-Palestine thing, but I would err on the side of saying, that maybe Israel is 60% wrong and the Muslim side is 40% wrong, in the wrong. And that's because of the particular way in which, the violence that Israel exercised in the beginning, in the early days of settling in the land, okay? They've got their own reason, they say, well, the UN said that we could take it, but the Arabs didn't want to, and they didn't want a two-state solution, and they were belligerent, and that is true, okay? So that's why I'm saying, I'm not ever going to say one side is perfect and the other's a demon, no way. But lately, like most of the world, I've kind of had a beef with the way Israel is handling the thing, that's all. I'm not saying that October 7 was a picnic, okay? It's a nightmare, particularly like where they went and massacred those young Israeli kids at that festival or concert or whatever that was, and I sort of half saw some footage of that, unfortunately. But I paused it and stopped watching, but that was horrendous. I still, to this day, can't believe that happened, but it's just both sides are bad. They're just using different methods of killing the other side. That's really all that's happening. Okay? Palestine side is using sort of more in-your-face, brutal one-on-one methods, whereas Israel is using a more clinical, a more detached, kind of, first world country, high-tech military type of approach, but to the killing. But the end result on both sides is just carnage. Okay. Like I said, Israel does it in like the American way, in the Western way, like with advanced military methods, but the other guys use terrorism, like guerrilla warfare, terrorism type of thing. But what's at the end of the day, what is anyone gaining out of any of this? All right. That's why I keep reverting back to the whole. We need to look at our problem areas like the traumas, the racial traumas, the genetic trauma that we have, and heal them, and particularly the races that have been through a lot of stuff in the past. They need to do it as soon as possible. They need to focus on it more than anyone else, especially for their own good. First of all, like I said about the Jewish people, like, why would you want to I had a Jewish friend in Melbourne, right? It's amazing. He's an awesome guy, amazing healer, spiritual healer. And we're having a conversation once, and he's like, "Oh well, I don't know. He was just talking about we're talking about food or something, and I think he said something about, oh, I got this stomach thing that I occasionally get. So he occasionally gets like a stomach disturbance thing, and he was explaining how it had to do. It was like a stress response thing, and he went on to explain how the Jews, because we've been persecuted for so many centuries, we have these responses, like these stress responses, blah blah blah, and I get it through this thing, like when my stomach, where I get like this reflux thing. I don't know exactly what it was, but it was some thing that it created, like it made him not be able to eat a particular food or eat at particular times or something like that. He had this disturbance that was an ongoing thing, and he explained to me how it had to do with with the ancestral trauma, right? So it's a real thing. And it came up in random conversation with this guy that day. Yeah, so this is a very real thing, and like I said, it's happened to all of us. Maybe I need to do some clearing up of the racial trauma that I have as a Greek person from the Turks, from the Ottoman Empire, that screwed us up real good for 400 years here. Okay, so we all have it, but the core of the problem there with Israel is that. That's it. That's what it is. It's that this racial, this ancestral trauma with the Jewish people has not been healed to a significant scale. Maybe there's some people, some New Age spiritual types there that have done work in this regard, but it would not be a majority of the population as a whole, right? So it's not enough. So more work needs to be done. I mean, this is the real solution to this stuff, because like I said earlier, otherwise it's just going to be this. We're going to be going around in circles, and it's just. I mean, instead of this thing is pissing me off. Instead of improving, it's just going to be getting worse. Okay, each side is going to be doubling down. Whether it's Palestine versus Israel, whether it's whites versus the Jews, all this whole, white nationalists versus Jewish supremacy, all that thing that you're constantly seeing on the internet, that there's apparently this struggle between those two groups. We both have traumatic memories in our DNA on both sides. Okay, so we're both just going to keep doubling down on our own thing, and the conflict is just going to be getting worse and worse. Okay, and it's going to be going around in 100-year cycles roughly. If you notice, we're like in the 20s now, and back in the 1920s it was very similar, right? We had Weimar Republic, and the Germans were starting to get really, really, really pissed off at that, because it was far leftism gone way too far. And it's happening now, but on a global scale, particularly in America, Anglosphere in general, but in a global scale more generally. And there's going to be a similar pendulum swing. Like there's going to be an equal and opposite reaction from the right side of the political right, right? So, and what's going to happen this time? Is it going to be like what happened in Germany, but like a global version of? I'm monitoring Twitter, like I'm looking at people's like what people say on Twitter, and I'm just basically gauging the whole vibe, like where the planet is at on this one. I'm telling you, there's a lot of people that will be ready to just attack people who they perceive to be, undermining Western culture and so on. And like I said before, roughly 95% of the people are, they're more or less NPCs, they're more or less, muggles, sheep. So they're going to resort to violence. They're not going to try to solve it through intellectual means, through discussion, through diplomacy, through, using metaphysical methods, like I was saying before, like healing past traumas through spiritual means, which that is actually the solution. But, you know, a very tiny percentage of the population is, first of all, going to take this seriously, and secondly, an even smaller percentage of that percentage is going to act on it. So don't expect most people to actually, take that solution and run with it. They're not gonna, even though I'm saying I'm giving the proper solution to it. Most people are not going to do it. So most people are just going to revert to violence again. Okay, so we're going to have a repeat of what happened in Europe approximately 80 years ago. I'm telling you, it's going to happen, and I'm not saying I'm glad. I'm saying I'm one of the many voices in the wilderness on the internet that are trying to reason with people and solve it on an intellectual level and spiritual level before it gets physical. Okay, because it's gonna, at the rate we're going. So, that's all I can say. This is a very sad realization for me. I don't want to black pill you, but it just does look that we're going in that direction, and people need to understand. People need, all the different groups and tribes need to look at, their pros and cons. No one's perfect. Whites have got a lot of bad traits. No one is perfect. So we need to really look at ourselves in the mirror and say, look, what am I doing wrong? Am I maybe overreacting? Is it maybe not true that there's a national socialist around every corner? Or the feminist? Is it maybe not true that I'm living in a patriarchy, and the actual reality, like this nice man on this video that's been spitting truths for almost 3 hours straight, maybe he's right, and it's actually a matriarchy. Like, technically, if you look at the laws and everything else, it's a matriarchy through and through. Maybe the black people, maybe they should be saying, maybe it's not that bad. The African Americans, specifically, maybe it's not that bad. Come to think of it, we're kind of living in the best country of all time, and we've got every opportunity in the world to become like the next Denzel Washington. Maybe we should just fucking work towards that, and stop complaining about the white man keeping us down or whatever. So all of us have the Greeks as well. It was a common thing we say is like, it's because of the Ottoman Empire. We were subjugated by the Ottoman Empire for 400 years. So that's why we're behind the rest of Europe now. We used to be a top dog 1,000 years ago or so, but now it's like, and we're never gonna match Germany, and that's because of the Ottoman Empire. And there's this whole thing of like, okay, so now we're going to keep talking about something that happened 200 years ago and not focus on the here and now, and not be more productive and organized and efficient and responsible in the here and now in 2024. Really? We're going to be fucking talking about the Ottoman Empire enslavement for the rest of time. Okay? So all the tribes tend to do this for their own particular traumas that they've been through. And it's time that we all stop that, because the point is for humanity to just raise up to the next level so that we can, colonize the stars, for Christ's sake. Stop fighting each other and move out of this place, go elsewhere. Not leave completely, but, expand other than on this place. And by the way, it's going to get really crowded at some point anyway. I don't believe in overpopulation, but I'm talking about when it gets to the point of like 100 billion, 200 billion, that would be legit overpopulation. We're not at that stage now. Planet can sustain easily 50 billion. Most of it is not inhabited. Okay. We've got vast areas that are just, there are no cities or anything. So if we had cities everywhere, we could fit 50 billion easily. So, but anyway, the point is that people like Elon Musk, they're right in wanting to, you know, get us to the point where spaceships have become so cheap to the point where everyone can basically afford, you know, like to basically normalize them, so they become the new normal, kind of like how automobiles in the days of Henry Ford were expensive, but then they became the new normal. Everyone had a car. Every teenager, every Tom, Dick, and Harry 15-year-old had a car at some point in the West. So that's how it should become in the next 50 years or whatever, with spaceships. So then we can go into our galactic phase of expansion as a species. And if we're stuck in this bullshit that I've been describing here, we're never going to get there. We're just going to end up like annihilating each other, or at the very least, like we're going to set each other back really badly, and then we're going to have to rebuild again. Like we're going to set each other back, like to the point where it's going to be like the work that we've done on technology and so on in the past 100 years or so, it's going to be erased, and then we have to start all over again. It's going to be like kind of like a, I don't know, we might have to start at a kind of industrial revolution type of phase all over again. Okay, so if we do this constant tribal warfare thing, yeah, it might set us back to like late 1800s levels. All right, so we don't want that. We want to not get to like full-on World War III devastation levels in the next, like there's a small window of time, the next 20, 30, 50 years, where if we don't blow ourselves up, then we're going to go, it's going to go exponential. Okay, and we'll have Musk and his spaceships and stuff, which they're going to be super affordable at that point, and probably he will inspire. You know, there'll be like other companies as well doing that same thing as well, so it'll be like the norm. Okay, like there was Henry Ford, and then 50 years later there were like dozens of companies that were making cars. Now it might happen, the same thing will happen with Musk. Like there will be like, might be dozens, hundreds of companies that will be doing what he does today. Okay, he just happens to be a pioneer toward that particular road for humanity to take, you know. And then, but then it'll become like the normal, new normal. So, but we have to not blow ourselves up until we get to that phase, okay? Because then when we get to that point, when everyone was like, it's going to be normalized, and you're like, okay, well, everyone can have a spaceship now, or at least everyone can afford. I'm not saying that literally 50 billion people will have a spaceship each, but like it might be affordable to the point where, you know, they'll make like a space, you know, a spaceship Titanic type of thing, and then you'll be able to afford it. Like everyone will be able to afford it, like, you know, $500 ticket or something. And it'll be like, okay, you can go on this and can take you to Mars or wherever else, Jupiter, whatever, you know, some other solar system, because they'll have like warp speed and stuff, or wormhole technology by then. They probably have it now, but it's not, they're just not telling us. But it'll be all, you know, released at that point, you know, declassified, a lot of that stuff. So we're getting to the space age. So we're in a very precarious position. Like we've got to not blow each other up, blow ourselves up, before we make it to the next level. Because then otherwise it's going to have to be like a reset again, and we'll have to start all over again. I mean, I said hopefully we might have to start only at an industrial revolution level, but knock on wood, you know, that we don't actually end up in a Stone Age thing. Okay, and like really have to start all over again. Okay, like we don't want to do an Atlantis all over again, where it's like we're at this almost like at a space age Star Wars type of society, and we're going to just, you know, we're going to go the way of Atlantis. What, and then start again, like with agricultural societies, like with sticks and stones? No, come on. So we have to not blow ourselves up. I know I said it 100 times, but some people might have no idea how important this statement is. I mean, this is a difference between becoming a type 1 civilization, which is to say a spacefaring civilization that's got space travel and colonizes other worlds and so on, versus devolving, like reverting back to an earlier stage and having to go through another 12,000 year cycle to again reach this precipice that we're at now. You know, it's insane to not, you know, just calm the F down for the next 30 to 50 years and say, look, let's just stop fighting for a bit. Because a bit, 50 years is a bit. Trust me, 50 years is like 5 minutes in galactic time, if you think about it. So, okay, let's just stop fighting for a couple of minutes. Stop with this Israel-Palestine thing and, you know, whites versus this versus that. Just leave it. I'm not saying to mix all the races so that we can stop fighting. That's not going to stop us from fighting. That's just going to turn us all into retards who have no individuality or diversity or anything. You're not going to mix an entire planet together and create just one light brown mass. See, a lot of these cabal people maybe think that that's a good thing because they're like, well, that's the only way we can stop fighting and end up, you know, going to the stars, like I was saying before. But no, that's not the way to do it. You can still be nationalistic, but not want to kill your neighbors, okay? The point of being nationalistic is to just, well, I want to be the master of my own affairs. And I don't want you coming in and telling me how to run my country. That's all it is. It's not nationalistic means I want to come in like a Viking and take all your stuff. No. It just means self-governance. It just means sovereignty, okay? That's all. Not having some other tribe, some foreign, you know, the other villages next door coming in and telling you how to run your stuff. That's all. That's all it is. That's really all it is, okay? And it's been twisted to the point of where it's almost barely recognizable. You know, the original innocuous, benevolent meaning of the word is unrecognizable almost these days. Okay. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed, please share, like, and subscribe. And also, please check out my associated channel, The New Aeon 2012, which was my original channel, and it's exclusively focused on spirituality and occultism. So some of you might be interested in that content, so go ahead and subscribe. Also, please check out the novel. It only costs 99 cents because it's the first entry in the saga. I have the link to the Amazon page below. If you're hesitant for whatever reason, you can get the first chapter for free. You get the PDF for the first chapter for free, no email sign up required or anything. So there's a link to that down below as well. Last but not least, please follow me on Twitter if you're a Twitter user, because that's where all the fun is these days. I will see you soon.